we have a technology that transforms data into stories. And when I say stories, what I mean is stories that are human readable, that actually take an event and turn that event into a full tilt narrative. And we do it automatically with absolutely no human intervention once the system is configured. And the punchline here is that we take things like this. This is data that describes a youth hockey game, and we turn it into this. A story that actually describes the game in full detail, in rich detail, aimed at actually explaining what happened and the most interesting elements. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about education. And in particular, I'm going to talk about one element of education which we can all agree with, and that is at the core of the educational process is the need for feedback. That is that students need to know how well they're doing, how badly they're doing, and what they can do to remediate any problems they might have. Now, in an absolutely perfect world, this work is done by teachers. Teacher sits down with the student and all this work product, looks at all the problems that he's having, explains to that student exactly what he should do, exactly what he or she should look at, exactly the exercises that they should care about. The problem with that is, of course, we don't have the resources to do that. There is no school, no matter how good in this country today, where a teacher will sit with every single student and every single piece of work product and actually give them exactly the advice they need to move things forward. As we move online, and we're trying to actually expand the reach of all of the materials that we have to broader and broader groups, this problem is amplified 1,000-fold, 100,000-fold, 1,000,000-fold. Now, it's important to understand that when I say feedback, I don't mean this. This is a report. This tells you in a snapshot how you're doing. It might actually be able to give you a sense of not only how you're doing, but how you might compare over time to other people. But it's not going to give you what you really want from feedback, and that is a call to action. That is to be able to say, look at this piece of material, try this exercise, practice this technique. And that call to action is really, in order to support that call to action, what we need is data. And that is for every single question, for every single answer. We need to know where that question is grounded in the materials, and for all of the mistakes, that are possible, for all the mistakes that are exposed in terms of the answers they can give, understanding what the cognitive deficits are, what the problems are that gave rise to the wrong answers as well as the right answers. I'm waiting for it. I thought this was going to zip, but you know, it's taking time. Oh, answers. Now, it turns out that for a lot of organizations, this data is available. And because this data is available, we can actually have, we have an opportunity to bring something to bear to it. And that is, we can bring the machine. And in particular, we can bring a machine that can look at all of the numbers associated with, the tests or the quizzes or the exercises that kids are doing. We can look at all of the mistakes they've made. We can look at all of the difficulty levels associated with those questions, and we can generate this. That is, focused pieces of advice. Focused information as to where they should go, what they should do, exactly the kinds of things that they should be looking at. We can give them a sense of, are there problems, fundamental problems in an area, or are there problems that are simply at the edge of that area? And that advice not only allows us to tell them what to do and what areas that they should focus on, but it allows us to actually begin to look at the task itself. Now, in some places, that task is actually going to be associated with the taking of the test. But in other areas, the task can be decomposed and expressed at the data level, so we can actually generate things like, the next time you take this practice test, you might consider skipping questions where you are genuinely unsure of the answer. Right? A piece of advice I believe everyone in this room has received at some point while taking your SATs. Now, there's an irony here, and then what I'm talking about is personalized feedback that is generated by the machine. Right? But the only way in which we can actually get to the scale that we need in order to have this advice, have this feedback, have this actual interaction with students is by using the machine to do so, and to get to an audience of one with technology. Thank you.